My family have been living in the same house for almost 10 years, but not once did we ever encounter anything supernatural or creepy. Probably because we built this house ourselves and made sure no dead bodies were buried in the soil, so we didn't have to worry about previous families having dark histories or such. Nobody has died in the house either, which is why when something disturbing finally happened to me on a certain afternoon, I couldn't come up with an explanation why it happened. It was summer break, those times when you have no school stuff to worry about and you can lay around the house all day. Most of the time, the only people in the house were me, my younger brother, and my grandma, since my mom was working, and my older brother had a summer job. After spending hours on the computer, I finally got bored and decided to take a quick bath, since that afternoon felt so humid and hot. You see, our bathroom door has this stained glass design or something. I'm not good at describing different types of glass, so you can see the silhouette of people passing by the door. But the other details like eyes, nose, or mouth are not clear. When my mom got it installed, I hated it because I was a girl, and I don't like the idea of people seeing me while inside there even if it's just my silhouette. Because if you come close enough to the glass, the better the person on the other side will see you. I had 2 brothers, so I don't really understand why the hell my mom installed that thing. Anyway, my bath was going fine, until I turned my head and realized a tall figure was standing right outside the door. It surely wasn't my grandma since she's a short person, so I concluded it was my brother because that guy is freaking tall even if he's younger than me. "Hey, I'm showering. Go away," I yelled, but he didn't even move an inch. He's probably just trying to annoy me again, so decided to throw a shampoo bottle against the door. "Go away." Thankfully, he did go away, and I just finished my shower while feeling a bit pissed. As soon as I got dressed, I went to confront him in his room. He was busy playing in his PC. "What were you doing standing in front of the bathroom like a creep while I was showering?" "I wasn't creeping on you," he simply said without even looking at me. I just rolled my eyes and didn't press any further, since he tends to lie when caught doing some crap, and it won't be easy to make him admit to it anyway. I decided to just shrug it off because he didn't do it again the rest of the day, so maybe he was just bored that moment. The very next day, I was taking a noon shower again, and when I looked at the door, there he was again. Just standing there and probably watching my silhouette move as I showered. "Dan! Go away!" I screamed, feeling annoyed but partly creeped out by my brother's actions. I was starting to think that he probably discovered some porn online and is now starting to fantasize about stuff. It was downright creepy. "Go away or I'll call Mom!" Finally, he started to slowly turn around and walk away, then disappeared into the left hallway. I was about to let out a relieved sigh, but then a different silhouette came running from the opposite hallway and stopped right in front of the door. My blood ran cold when I realized that this person is surely my brother. I can clearly see his brown skin and even the yellow tint of his SpongeBob shirt. The other silhouette, however, was equally tall, but pure black, as if just a shadow. "What did you say?" he called out, like he really didn't hear what I have been screaming. I wasn't able to answer because I was still completely shocked about what just happened. It was like my mind just went blank. "Hey, you okay?" My brother's voice snapped me out of it, and I hurriedly got dressed. When I got out, I was greeted by his confused face. I probably looked so pale because I could still feel myself numb from all that shock. I pulled my brother to the living room and started to explain everything to him. He didn't tease or laugh at me because even though we piss off each other most of the time, when one of us is totally shaken up, we know something is surely wrong. He explained that he didn't hear anybody else sneak into the house, and we even have 5 dogs outside for Christ's sake, and none of them barked even once. We didn't want to conclude that it was something paranormal since, just like I said earlier, we never experienced such things in the house after living here for a very long time, and it happened in broad daylight. Don't paranormal entities prefer to haunt people at night? We decided to approach our grandma since she's the one that has experienced odd things during her younger days. All she told us was that spirits tend to visit homes once in a while, even if they don't know the people living in there. She even joked that maybe that certain spirit just fancied me, but that idea only scared me more. The 3 of us agreed to keep the matters from my mother, since she's a full-blown skeptic and would probably just nag me, saying that I'm reading too much horror stuff. It was already comforting enough for me that 2 people sincerely believed my story. Since that last encounter, I don't enter that bathroom without praying and praying to be kept safe from whatever that thing was. For all I know, it could be a demon, and I sure as hell don't want a demon stalking me. It didn't happen again for a few days as if to give me a break, but then, it visited me again as if for one final goodbye. Being the very unfortunate me, it was late at night, and most of the lights were already off, although none of us were asleep yet. I was the last to take a shower, but I made sure I had my phone inside the bathroom with me since the fear was still crawling around my system. I kept my eyes glued to the stained glass as I tried to shower as quickly as I can. I was only halfway done washing away the shampoo when I saw the same black figure slowly walk closer the door. I actually fucking saw how it appeared from the dark hallway like it has always been there all the time. Heart racing, I slowly reached for my phone, letting the shower stay on so that thing hopefully wouldn't know that I already noticed it. I was already letting out shaky breaths as I went to my brother's contact number. As soon as I pressed call and my brother's phone started ringing from somewhere in the house, the figure suddenly reached for the doorknob and started to try and open it. The knob was shaking so violently that I thought it would actually break. At that point, I just lost it. I screamed. I let out the loudest scream I ever made in my whole life, hoping that everyone would hear it and come to my rescue. When loud footsteps echoed in the hallway, the figure quickly stepped back and immediately disappeared back into the darkness, as if it was never even there. When I could hear my brothers and my mom calling for me outside, I fumbled to wrap myself with a towel and opened the door. I hugged whoever was nearest to me and cried. Jumbled words of explanation came out of my mouth, and I just hoped that they understood me. Thankfully, my mom didn't nag me and stayed beside me the whole night to assure me that I'll be okay. Immediately after that, my mom had that door removed and replaced it with a normal, solid one. Since then, I haven't seen that thing again, though I couldn't deny that I still have this constant fear that one day it will pop in my face and finally get me. Or for all I know, it's actually just standing behind that solid door, staring at the plain white surface like it could still see me. It was a Thursday night in early November, and I was home alone for the first time in months. My parents had gone out for dinner with some friends, a rare outing for them. They left me in charge of the house with a reminder to keep the doors locked and not to stay up too late. At 22, I was used to the responsibility, but something about that night felt off from the start. Our neighborhood was typically quiet, nestled in a small town where everyone knew everyone. It wasn't uncommon to go days without seeing anyone pass by the house. As the evening wore on, I decided to settle in for the night. I grabbed a bag of microwave popcorn and put on an old horror movie, something cheesy to keep the mood light. Halfway through the film, I heard a soft knock at the front door. It was so faint that I thought it might be a part of the movie. I paused the film and listened, but the house was silent. I dismissed it, assuming it was just my imagination or maybe the wind. I resumed the movie, sinking deeper into the couch. But then it happened again. This time, the knock was louder, more insistent. My heart started to race as I muted the TV and strained to listen. The knocking continued, slow and deliberate, echoing through the silent house. I felt a chill run down my spine as I got up and crept to the front door. Peeking through the peephole, I saw nothing but the dimly lit front porch. The street beyond was empty, not a soul in sight. I felt a wave of relief, thinking it might have been some kids playing a prank. But before I could turn away, I noticed something strange. The porch light, which was usually a steady yellow, was flickering as if someone was messing with the wires. I stepped back from the door. The flickering light cast eerie shadows across the porch, making it difficult to tell if anyone was lurking just out of view. I double-checked the lock on the door, then hurried back to the living room, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over me. Not even 5 minutes later, I heard another noise, this time from the back of the house. It sounded like someone tapping on the glass door that led to the backyard. My breath caught in my throat as I froze, listening. The taps were rhythmic, deliberate, almost as if they were meant to draw me in. I didn't want to go back there, but something inside me made me tiptoe to the kitchen, where I could get a view of the glass door. The kitchen was dark, and I had to peer around the corner to get a good look. When I finally mustered the courage to peek, I saw him. A shadowy figure of a man standing just outside the glass door. He was tall, dressed in dark clothing, with his face obscured by a hood. I couldn't see any details, but I knew he was staring directly at me. He didn't move, didn't knock, didn't do anything but stand there, watching. My mind raced with what to do next. Call the police? Hide? Try to scare him off? Before I could decide, the man suddenly slammed his fist against the glass, sending a sharp crack through the silence. The sound was so loud it echoed in my ears, and I bolted out of the kitchen, my heart nearly leaping out of my chest. I ran upstairs, locking myself in my bedroom. My hands trembled as I dialed 911, stammering out what had happened to the operator. She told me to stay on the line and that officers were on their way. I huddled in the corner of my room, trying to listen for any signs that the man was attempting to break in. The minutes stretched on, feeling like hours. But finally, I heard the wail of sirens approaching. The relief I felt was overwhelming, but it was quickly replaced by dread. What if the man was still out there, hiding somewhere in the shadows? When the police arrived, they searched the entire property. The glass door had a small crack where the man had hid it, but otherwise, there was no sign that anyone had been there. No footprints, no broken locks, nothing. It was as if the man had vanished into thin air. The officers suggested it might have been a prank or a drifter passing through, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something more sinister. I stayed with a friend for the next few days, too shaken to sleep at home alone. My parents were skeptical, thinking I'd overreacted, but I knew what I saw. That man wasn't just trying to scare me, he was waiting for something, and I'm just glad I didn't stick around to find out what. It was a Saturday night in the summer of 2005. I remember it clearly because my kids had finally gone to bed after a long day of playing outside with the neighborhood kids. We had a routine: dinner, a little bit of TV, and then I tucked them into bed around 8:30. By 10, I was exhausted. Being a single mother, raising 2 kids on my own, the days were long, and I hardly ever got time to relax. I slipped into bed myself, hoping to catch up on some sleep. I'd always felt safe in our little town of Cape Elizabeth, Maine. It was quiet, and nothing bad really ever seemed to happen here. I never felt the need for an elaborate security system. Just lock the doors, maybe a window or two cracked for fresh air. Everyone in town knew everyone, and my neighborhood was full of young families, retirees, and people who'd lived here for decades. It wasn't the kind of place where you worried about break-ins or strangers lurking outside your window. But that night, I woke up. At first, I didn't know why. My room was dark, but I could feel something was wrong. I remember the air feeling different, heavy, like the atmosphere had shifted. My eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness, and that's when I saw him. Standing between me and the bedroom door was a man. He was tall, too tall, maybe 6 feet 4 inches, and unnervingly slender. He was just standing there, his silhouette barely visible against the faint glow coming through the bedroom window. His face was obscured in shadow, but I could see the glint of his eyes, watching me. I could feel his gaze, even though he didn't move. Then something strange happened. He didn't rush toward me, didn't say a word. He just turned, without any urgency, and calmly walked out of my bedroom. Like he hadn't been caught. Like he didn't care. I was left sitting there, my mind trying to catch up. Was this real? Had I just woken up to a stranger standing over me, watching me sleep? My thoughts were spinning, wondering if this was some bizarre dream or maybe sleep paralysis. But everything in me knew better. This had really happened. As the adrenaline kicked in, my thoughts went immediately to my children. My heart sank. Were they okay? What if he had been in their room first? What if he was going back in there now? I rushed out of bed, my legs shaky, and ran to their room. I'll never forget the sight when I opened their door. My 2 kids were sound asleep, undisturbed, completely unaware of the terror I had just experienced. The relief was so overwhelming I almost started crying. But then, just as I was about to close their door, I heard something from the hallway that made my blood run cold. The front door. I heard it creak open, slowly, as if someone was trying not to make a sound. I held my breath, listening to every movement. Then, the door clicked shut, firmly this time. He had just walked out of my house. At that moment, I didn't care why he had left, only that he was gone. But my fear turned into a sickening feeling of violation. He had been inside my house, watching me sleep. God knows how long he'd been standing there before I woke up. I called the police immediately. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. When the officers arrived, they checked the house thoroughly. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, nothing out of place. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. This wasn't the first time they had heard a story like mine. Not even close. The officer, an older man who looked like he'd seen everything in his career, sat me down and explained that for months now, people all over Cape Elizabeth had been reporting similar incidents. They'd wake up in the middle of the night to find a tall, slender man standing in their bedroom, silently watching them. No one ever saw his face clearly. He never took anything, never hurt anyone. He would just stand there, sometimes for minutes, until they woke up. Then he'd calmly leave. The police had started calling him the Cape Intruder. They reassured me that he had never been violent, but honestly, that didn't make me feel any safer. The police were at a dead end. For weeks after that, I barely slept. Every noise in the night would jolt me awake. I checked the locks on the doors and windows at least 3 times before bed. Whoever he was, he's still out there somewhere. Maybe he moved on to another town, or maybe he's just waiting for the right moment to start again. All I know is that I'll never forget that night, and the feeling of being watched.